and welcome to this week's Movie Math, where April is off to a pretty good start. And speaking of Larry David, tonight is the series finale of Curb Your Enthusiasm on HBO. The end of a final season, which you might have noticed no one is talking about. Is it because the final season isn't that good? Or is it because Larry David laying hands on Elmo really did damage his brand? You discuss. What do you think? Honestly, I'm curious. My position is that as I tweeted at the time, it really bothered me that he did that. But I've enjoyed Curb Your Enthusiasm in the past. Not only the show itself, but the discussion around it, right? But I didn't like the first few episodes this season, and then I was still kind of upset with him about the Elmo thing, so I didn't stick around. And also, no one was talking about it. I didn't feel like I was missing the conversation on Sunday. I didn't feel like there was a conversation I needed to be a part of. So what do you think? I really do think it's the Elmo thing. So stay away from puppets, man. All right, so many of you at the time claimed that it wouldn't be a problem, and then you thought it was funny. But did you watch Curb Your Enthusiasm before? Right? Like, maybe he amused people who didn't watch the show, so it didn't matter. I'm very curious now that we are in the future. When you look back at the Elmo event, what do you think might have actually spun out of that? All right, back to, I'm sure, I wonder if he and his management and agents team even dare to consider it. It's probably kind of depressing. All right, so anyway, back to because he was just riding so high. All right, back to the box office. The MonsterVerse brand is looking good with a 60% drop for its second weekend, which, that's okay for most blockbusters. Obviously you'd like it to be somewhere in the 50s. They open so big, they tend to drop a lot in their second weekends. So having a 6 in front of it is, it's okay. But for this franchise, it's phenomenal that it only dropped 60%, because usually these things fall hard, just like a kaiju. They go down hard, but this one's still doing okay. And one of the reasons that it is because it's benefiting from lack of competition, as both Monkey Man and the first Omen failed to materialize. They're not flops, but they both came in under expectations, and the expectations were low, so they couldn't even hit that. Both movies skewed very strongly male, with Monkey Man getting a bump from Asian audiences, while the first Omen got a bump from Latino audiences, which is par for the course, of course, for horror films. The Latino audience loves horror movies. The audience scores, as I said, they're okay. No disasters, but nothing to get excited about either. You're not going to look at any of those audience scores and be like, people are excited about this movie. It's fine. Both films, I'd say, are clearly in Hollywood's newest post-pandemic category, streaming films that get a theatrical release to give them a little bit more prestige, a little more oomph. So when they do hit digital, you treat them like, if they went straight to digital, that would be really bad, right? It's basically how studios have to do this, which is maybe why they don't spend that much money on advertising for these smaller films. Because, they have their own streaming services, but, they put their movies in theaters first to differentiate them from the movies that are made by the streaming services that typically don't go to theaters. Hollywood's still figuring this out, but this is definitely a new category. Arthur the King is one of these movies. It's really a streaming film, but you give it a little, as I said, prestige. Put a little spin on it by putting it in theaters. Clearly, The Omen is not a huge horror brand. Obviously, it's a famous. Is it really a famous? I think the first Omen is really good. So good that I wouldn't watch it again because it gave me the heebie-jeebies. But it's not a brand that is carried over and has a lot of name recognition today. Plus, it opened way too close to fellow Nun movie Immaculate. It's ridiculously close, the two films. And as for Dev Patel, this is an interesting one. This is the third biggest opening of his career. Yet he doesn't really make movies that are meant to open big. I think partially because he doesn't land big roles, maybe due to Avatar, right? He was on Marvel's shortlist for Mr. Fantastic, but that didn't materialize. We know I think it's weird. He picks the smaller, he gravitates towards the smaller intellectual films. And I understand that. That is a proven track a proven strategy. It's a proven strategy to go make these small films before then you go and you get your big blockbuster, right? He tried to do that going from Slumdog to Avatar, but didn't work out. So, people who've done this are like, for instance, a good example is Tobey Maguire. Made a lot of small prestige movies, got his reviews were excellent. Then he jumped to Spider-Man very successfully. So maybe Dev Patel is trying to keep his reviews good and his image strong so that he would be an asset maybe to a big franchise. But it's taken too long, which is why he even had to make this movie. No one, big studios are not picking him. Maybe it's because of Avatar, but also I think it's partially because, it's a shame. He was burned so badly by Avatar. He apparently is not interested in making like a mid-range movie. But I think he needs to move to the mid-range films. I think intellectualism is hurting him. I think it's hurt, his movies don't open big enough. I think the insistence on intellectual aspects to Monkey Man hurt that film and why it's not being as well received as, the trailer was, which was a little misleading. So, intellectualism is fine and it helps some people quite a bit. We're going to talk about Alex Garland in just a minute. But, it's been a long time and Dev Patel just isn't moving forward. So I think, you got to try a new tactic, Dev. He did get a lot of publicity from Monkey Man, which is great. Always nice to get a lot of publicity and a lot of love from the industry and the media. But then when the box office doesn't materialize and the audience scores are only okay, then that's a bit of a bummer. The party seems like, maybe there wasn't a party here. So I think that's something now that he's going to have to grapple with. I think Monkey Man will keep his career alive. I think it'll keep his career going, but I don't see it taking his career to a new level. Because clearly, he's not someone who excites audiences at some of you are probably like, I was excited, Grace. That's awesome. I'm so glad that you were. I'm sure Dev Patel is very grateful that you were. But not enough people get excited by Dev Patel to really move the needle for a film. So, if you were maybe thinking of casting him before Monkey Man came out, now you'd be like, oh, is he really going to be able to bring anything to my film from a business perspective? And I know that's probably going to make some of you annoyed, but that's the business. Again, Hollywood is at its best when it's a good balance of business and creativity. And I think the audience scores mean that even Monkey Man was a little soft creatively. If it had stronger audience scores, it could withstand the softer box office. Put your business hat on. Would you cast Dev Patel after seeing Monkey Man's debut? Maybe as supporting, right? Maybe in a streaming show. Maybe he can get a streaming show off of this. And I'd really advise him to get on social media. I think, Monkey Man was close to the prediction. It was close. It had less than 2 million to make up. So I think if he'd been on social media, that might have done it. And so I think that was another mistake. And again, I think he's not on social media, probably also partially for mental health, because it's pretty toxic on social media. But also I think it fits with the intellectual image he's trying to give himself. And, you got to be able to tweet about your projects, man. You got to post about them. You got to X about them. You got to be on Instagram, TikTok. It doesn't have to be on TikTok maybe, but I think not having any social media presence at all was a mistake, particularly for a film that he had so much ownership on. All right, now, what's going to be really interesting is what Civil War does to the marketplace this coming weekend. Oh, what will the second weekend drops be for Monkey Man and the first Omen? And the third weekend drop for Godzilla x Kong. Speaking of brands, A24 certainly has cultivated a powerful one over the years with cinephiles, right? The industry and the media. But they're not known for their box office, right? So this is the first time they're trying to launch a potential blockbuster. They've had a couple of hits, but you don't really have your movie be released by A24 to make a lot of money. But you know what? Why not? Why can't they get into the blockbuster space? Because Christopher Nolan has ushered in the age of the intellectual blockbuster. So who better to be in that space and to capitalize on that movement than intellectual distributor A24? The film has no major stars that are considered a draw. I'm sure some of you, I like Wagner Moura and Kirsten Dunst very much, thank you. But look at their box office numbers. They're not pulling anybody in. Jesse Plemons is doing most of the heavy lifting with just one clip from the trailer, but it was an incredible clip. And Nick Offerman has some heat post The Last of Us, and I'm surprised they aren't using both of those guys to promote this film more. Speaking of wanting to have a box office turnout, those are the two dudes who are going to do it for you. The film so far has a very strong Rotten Tomatoes score. I'm seeing it tomorrow, and let me just say, A24 is putting on quite the event, and I'm extremely excited to attend. A24 rarely debuts a movie in wide release. The Iron Claw opened wide. That was their last one that they opened wide. Love that movie. But it opened with just 4.8. Civil War is expected to open from 12 to 18. Its low end is where Monkey Man was supposed to open. So Hollywood feels that in some ways Monkey Man and Civil War are a comp. That was pretty nice for Dev Patel. It's too bad he couldn't pull that off. But with all the premium screens in its corner, it's launching on IMAX and Dolby. I think it could be bigger. Are you planning to see it in theaters this weekend? I think it's going to be bigger than 12 to 18. I hope it is. We need the hit. Alex Garland's box office track record as a director is poor. And while Ex Machina gave him the foundation to join the likes eventually of Nolan and Denis Villeneuve, it hasn't been easy for Villeneuve either. You can do it, Alex Garland. Stop threatening to quit directing. Don't give up. But Garland has struggled even to win over audiences, his own fans, with his follow-up films Annihilation and Men. Whew, those audience scores are poopy. But as, again, you gotta, come on, man. You can help us help you. But as Dune Part 2 finally starts to fade at the multiplex, I guess that hitting digital next Tuesday actually is a good idea. It dropped to number 6 this weekend. Fans of intellectual blockbusters are primed to jump to the next one. Civil War, in my opinion, is extremely well positioned. The only potential hiccup is that Garland is writing about U.S. domestic tensions as someone from the UK, which is what caused him to make California and Texas team up, which really confounded a lot of us in America, and our questions seem to have annoyed Alex Garland. He has also claimed that the film isn't political, but how can a film about a modern civil war not be political? And also, it might not be political in terms of United States politics, but is it political in the world's opinion of the United States? I feel it might be. But maybe, though, this not being political, right, will actually allow everyone to read into the film what they want, and therefore it will give the film broader appeal. Alex Garland might be crazy smart like a fox. Again, I'll find out for myself tomorrow when I see the film, and my review will go up on Tuesday. I'm very excited. As I said, it's quite the party we're getting to go to. I can't wait. All right. And I'm glad it's going to be playing on the prestige, the premium screens. I think they are creating an event, and I think that's very exciting. We'll see if it actually materializes. But I think so far so good. Again, are you planning to see it in theaters this weekend? A lot of tickets still available if you'd like to maybe snag some now. Back to this weekend's box office, it looks like Ghostbusters Frozen Empire will at least hit the century mark before itself goes to digital. It would be the 4th movie of the year to do so far. But at this rate, it's not going to catch up to the last one, Afterlife, which means that Sony will have to be on the lookout yet again for new creative leadership for the franchise. Jason Reitman, son of Ivan Reitman, has not worked out. I know some of you like that film. I still have not been able to see it, unfortunately, but this is just too soft. And I gotta tell you, I think Jason Reitman and his friend Gil Keenan, I believe, I think their approach was clearly soft. I think they intentionally took a soft approach, and I'm against a soft approach for major blockbusters. Blockbusters are anything but soft. Let's treat it like a delicate family movie. What? All right, as for 2024 so far worldwide, Dune Part 2 has passed 600 million, pretty much tied with Wonka. I think that's interesting. Kung Fu Panda 4 has passed 400 million. That's getting pretty close to Puss in Boots 2, actually. I don't think it's going to get there, but this is very nice that it has a 4 in front of it. And Godzilla x Kong is already past 300 million, right? That's pretty good for the early months of the year. I mean, yes, sometimes the January, February holiday weekends or spring break can deliver like a mega blockbuster, like close to $1 billion movie. But usually the big movies come out in the summer, fall, and then holiday movie season. So this is solid. I've seen some doom and gloom today about 2024's box office, but I think this is not bad, especially because now everybody's in the streaming business as well. So they're spreading out where they have their audience and where they can get their wins. I think, obviously the movie business is never going to go back to what it was pre-pandemic and pre-streaming. So I think the fact that it can still remain competitive and still deliver some major numbers is very encouraging. All right, also, the faith-based business continues to do well at the box office, especially when it comes from outside Hollywood. Here, Fathom Events has released the film adaptation of a book, Someone Like You, and that was able to place in the top 10. One of the reasons it's also able to place in the top 10 is because the top 10 isn't what it used to be anymore either. And you can get into the top 10 with less than 5 million on a consistent basis, which, that's just, it is what it is. What are you going to do? Over on streaming, Variety still has Three Body Problem and Roadhouse as the most popular original show and movie on streaming for just last week. Yet again, it's hard to really get a read on what's going on in the streaming space when you only look at originals in this weird Friday to Thursday window. With Nielsen for early March, so long ago, Netflix continues to dominate, not just with their originals, but whatever they decide to bring back from the throwback, bring back a throwback show. The latest to benefit is Brooklyn Nine-Nine. Look at that. They blew up Brooklyn Nine-Nine. They're so powerful over there. Here we see Damsel was indeed a big hit movie for them. And while The Gentleman and Avatar are solid hits, Avatar, you can see, is doing well enough for a renewal, but also sinking quickly enough, to make it understandable that Netflix just brought in new showrunners. Speaking of sinking, over on the originals chart, Shogun dropped a bit after its debut week instead of going up. It's a weekly release. It went from 2 episodes to just 1. But you would think that maybe, all the chatter, you would hope that there was chatter, would have brought in new viewers. And so it would have maybe at least stayed steady. But, as we discussed before, FX and Hulu have not done a great job publicizing this show. And so therefore, there's not very much discussion about it. It could happen to everybody. I think Netflix really dropped the ball with Ripley. I'm very sad to see Ripley should be a much bigger hit than it is. Although, why are you guys against watching anything in black and white? You're missing such incredible stuff not watching black and white. FX in particular really guards their shows, sending them out to very few press in advance, which makes it hard to cover the show, and why also another reason a lot of people don't talk about FX shows, you might have noticed. Paramount Plus has similar issues as well. On the movies chart, after Damsel is Ricky Stenicki, which didn't generate enough minutes to make the overall chart, even though here it's number 2. So that's a very big drop from number 1 to number 2. Not great for Zac Efron, and particularly not great for John Cena, who really worked hard to promote the film. Zac Efron, not so much. Maybe he knew it was a stinker, but John Cena, especially as Conor McGregor is doing so well with Roadhouse. Watch your back, John Cena. All right, but Max is doing pretty good over here with recent Warner Brothers movies. That's turning out nicely for them. Wonka hit the service at number 3, and Aquaman is still doing pretty good after just hitting last week. I don't know if it was recently. And the first Dune is doing nicely, not only on Max, but also Hulu and Netflix. That's Zazie. He'll take his money. He doesn't care. All money is the same color. Zazie doesn't care where it comes from. He's just trying to amass enough of it. I gotta tell you, from a business perspective, Zazie's actually doing pretty good. I'll be curious to see if he's able to sell Warner Brothers and for how much in it. It might be an incredible deal. Poor Things also, there you can see it's on Hulu. It didn't enjoy the same explosion of chatter that Saltburn did on Prime Video. Saltburn's a trashier movie. Maybe that's one of the reasons it was better suited for social media. And, Poor Things, of course, very serious with Oscar wins and all that stuff. But again, Hulu should be like, why didn't that blow up for us? Why wasn't that our Saltburn? They gotta think over there about their release strategy for content. On Netflix's charts, this is very interesting. South African action movie Heart of the Hunter is number 1. It's not a very strong number 1, but number 1 is number 1. If I were a Hollywood producer, I'd be taking a look at this cast, especially star Banco Koza, and I'm sure Netflix is considering giving him a follow-up project already. They're like, they have their numbers as they release them, and they're like, we gotta make sure this guy stays in house. And Ben Affleck's The Accountant is getting some love on Netflix, which is good because the sequel is now, Warner Brothers sold it to Prime Video, where it will be a streaming movie. Hey, Roadhouse was just a huge hit as a streaming film for Prime Video, and Jake Gyllenhaal landed a big development deal off of Roadhouse for both streaming and theatrical films. That's nice for Jake Gyllenhaal. Plus, we know that Affleck already has a relationship with Amazon after Air. So it's interesting to see again, the different spaces developing and how talent is taking advantage of that. With Netflix shows, I know some of you love Three Body Problem, but these numbers are just not great. Avatar's first full week on Netflix, because this is Three Body Problem's first full week. Last week on charts, on Netflix's charts, it only had like 3 days. Here's the first full week. As you can see, Avatar's first full week on Netflix was 19.9 million, and The Gentleman was even higher at 20.1. So Three Body Problem is below both of them. And even those two shows are only like, that's okay. But look, this to me I find interesting, fellow reality TV fans. Look at Maurizio down at number 8. At first, it seemed like this was his revenge show after the Real Housewives of Beverly Hills edit this season made him look really bad. But Kyle herself seems to be on this show a lot herself, which surprised me. I find this suspicious. Are both Kyle and Maurizio getting ready to jump to Netflix from Bravo? I have further evidence. On Bravo, they didn't want to talk about their personal problems. They only hinted at them, only to unleash a tsunami of tea about their breakup on the Netflix show. Both of them. Plus, Netflix is giving their kids a lot of airtime, so they're building out the whole family. Is their potential divorce, I'm not going to believe it if this is true, really just a mega storyline to enable this jump? If it is, I'll be like, wow, reality TV is all manufactured. I mean, we know it is to some degree, but that would be an incredible level of manufacturing. And it would be an incredible jump to have manufactured a storyline that big and to make it seem maybe kind of real enough to make people interested in it, and then use that to parlay to jump to a different service and probably a bigger payday. I mean, that would be just a monumental coup in the reality TV game. And lover or hater, I am no Kyle Richards fan, but even I would have to say bravo. Ironically, I guess I'd say bravo, that Kyle Richards would be able to maybe manufacture something like this. You know, again, as I said, lover or hater, what's kept her alive all these years is certainly not her on-screen persona, but instead her very smart business savvy behind the scenes. It was her idea even to do a Real Housewives of Beverly Hills. She put it together. She's managed to stay on all these years. She's created, teams. She is really a force to be reckoned with. So let's see if the family does jump to Netflix. I'm not going to believe it, but again, my hat would be off to them. As for iTunes, nothing too exciting happening over here. Although Michael Keaton's Alzheimer's thriller Knox Goes Away, which he also directed, is finding an audience on digital. Older stars still have a lot of pull in digital and streaming, interestingly enough, and it's odd that streaming doesn't capitalize on them more. So far, Arnold Schwarzenegger and Harrison Ford have done the most in the digital and streaming space with very good results. We'll see how Beetlejuice does, but maybe Michael Keaton is indeed building to a place where he'll have some real capital to spend after its release. And again, I would advise these older stars not to feel that they have to make a movie. There's a lot in streaming, a lot of money in streaming, a lot of opportunity in streaming, and I would tell Michael Keaton to consider a streaming series. As for this, I'd be like, look where your bread's buttered already, Michael, on iTunes. As for this coming weekend, as I said, we'll see if A24 can truly launch Civil War. Nicolas Cage also has he has another quirky movie hitting theaters. He's a quirky movie machine. This time it's Arcadian in extremely limited release, like 1 or 2 showtimes a day. So that's a very odd release strategy. I guess it's the best they could do, which I guess also makes you question Nicolas Cage's, I guess Nicolas Cage wants to work, but I mean, like, dude, what are you doing that they can only book your movie on like 1 or 2 showtimes a day? You can't even get the screen for the day? On digital, Anthony Hopkins and Russell Crowe are both releasing films, and as we just discussed, they might do pretty well on digital because I think people, I wonder who it is. Is it mostly older viewers? Is it just everybody who goes, oh, hey, I know that actor, I'll click on that? If you do ever click on these movies, even though they look so bad and like they're just direct to video, what makes you click on them? Is it the star? Is that enough for you? With streaming films, Hulu has The Greatest Hits, which I'm only mentioning because it features David Corenswet, aka future Superman. Well, Netflix has this live-action Woody Woodpecker movie. What the what? But watch it be huge. Let's see. Then with shows, this is where the week gets big. Tonight, PBS gets back in the game with the UK series, Mr. Bates versus the Post Office. I do miss watching UK shows on PBS. Although is PBS still Channel 13? I guess it is. It's weird in the world of streaming today. But I watched the trailer for Mr. Bates versus the Post Office, and it didn't look that good. Well, on Wednesday, Peacock starts Hapless, which is also from the UK, and Chucky's back with part 2 of season 3. Chucky was really hot for a while. I wonder why it didn't stay hot. Of course, the really big news this week is that Fallout drops its entire season on Prime Video this Thursday. The review embargo lifts Wednesday. I can't wait to talk to you about it. And after the success of Mr. and Mrs. Smith as a binge, it will be interesting to see if Amazon made the right call here to also binge drop this video game adaptation. We were all expecting a weekly. It's so weird because The Boys worked so hard to transition to weekly, and then here's Amazon Prime. And Reacher did extremely well as a weekly show. But yet Mr. and Mrs. Smith was very good. Mr. and Mrs. Smith definitely, in my opinion, was a binge. I have to finish Fallout. I'm almost done. I'm not sure if Fallout should have been a binge or weekly. It's one hell of a binge. All right, so then on Friday, as Manhunt wraps up, the Abraham Lincoln Show on Apple TV, they're doubling down on American history with the debut of Franklin, not your dad's. They're billing it as not your dad's Ben Franklin, but who else wants to watch it but your dad? So that might be a weird strategy. All right, then Netflix drops its controversial animated update of Good Times, right? Black Twitter was not amused when this trailer debuted, but will they hate watch it so they can hate tweet about it? Lots of potential engagement here, and that's the world we live in. So I am curious to see how Good Times performs. All right, so that's this week's movie math. What have you been watching? What do you plan to watch? And how do you think Civil War will open in theaters? Share your thoughts down below, subscribe today, and of course, as always, you can check out some more videos right now.